So I'm Wesley Jones. I'm a biodesign fellow and UCLA Anderson alum, now co-founder and CEO of Vonova. We're a device company based in San Diego, developing a minimally invasive brain interface to improve access to treatment for drug-resistant epilepsy and opening up a new $7 billion neurotech market. But before I get too much into the who and the what, let's kick things off with our why. See, epilepsy patients with these uncontrolled seizures have very little hope of a normal life. After trying multiple anti-seizure medications, their only treatment path is invasive brain surgery, drilling and cutting through the skull just to place electrodes on the surface of the brain to identify the origin of these seizures. It's a diagnostic surgery just to get data to tell you if you're eligible for the epilepsy surgery. It's no surprise that 99.9% of the 30 million patients worldwide never receive their treatment and never get this initial diagnostic procedure, and thus live on with their chronic disabilities in fear of the next seizure, in fear of going to school, maintaining a relationship, ultimately until their premature death. Now, this is my why, and the why of Vonova, which translates to new hope. Now, my story begins as a medical device engineer. I specialize in catheter, minimally invasive technology, having spent a decade before UCLA developing 11 of these products to market for Medtronic and Acutus Medical in the treatment of irregular heartbeats or heart arrhythmia. Now, what's a heart engineer doing in the field of neurology? Well, you'd be surprised that irregular heart signals are quite similar to the problem and challenge of irregular brain signals. Just to help quickly illustrate, imagine this room were full of dominoes. Now, just like cells in your heart or on your brain, you want the action potential and signal to go from one domino to the next, from that door all the way to me in a nice, in-sync concert cascade. But when you have epilepsy or seizures, one of those dominoes in the middle of the room decides to fall on their own, creating interference. Same thing with heart arrhythmia. Now, what do you do to solve it? You go find those bad dominoes and you get rid of them. You burn them, ablate them, cryo, or just remove. Now, 3 decades ago, or 4 or so, in the heart, you needed open chest surgery just to figure out where these bad dominoes were for atrial fibrillation, the left side of the heart. Now, this unsung hero, the transeptal approach, a device I've actually worked on before, iterations, not 4 decades ago, as you can imagine, it turned what was a $100 million market to over $10 billion today because of improved access to care. Millions of patients are now treated with persistent AFib because of this technology. Now at Vonova, we're developing an analogous technology, Cerebro Atlas, that uses the vein in your arm to access the surface of your brain without drilling through the skull, opening up this new $7 billion neurotech market. Now, this technique was invented by my co-founder, Dr. Jose Morales. He's a current interventionalist here at UCLA, and unfortunately he couldn't be here. He's busy helping patients. And we met through the UCLA Biodesign Fellowship back in 2020. We quickly connected my industry and technical expertise with his clinical expertise. And now with our new pathway to the brain's surface and IP exclusive, we're developing this technology to first help epileptologists diagnose the source of epilepsy and then later get into the treatment. This is a Class 2 breakthrough device with de novo classification. So in our procedure, an interventionalist like Dr. Morales will insert our catheter through the vein all the way up to this vein at the top of your skull called the superior sagittal sinus. It's quite large. It's about 1 centimeter in diameter, 2 millimeters thick, and we deploy our electrode array to interface with the brain across that dura. Now, there's only one other company in the world today who's mapping endovascularly, Synchron. I'm sure everyone's heard about them. They had a TED Talk They just finished their first in human about a year and a half ago, and valued at $385 million with just their first in human. However, they can only access and monitor and interface with the brain wherever that vein goes. Whereas our technology, we can go anywhere on the surface of the brain. I'll get more into that later. Now, we validated this novel technique through cadaveric experiments. Shown here, first in history study. You see us accessing via catheter from the vein into that subdural space. Now, this was presented at last year's Society of Vascular and Interventional Neurology. And so now, with this technical and procedure feasibility completed, we're continuing to build through safety testing and looking for partners to join us along on that mission. Because really, the time to build is right now. We have a massive opportunity to disrupt the epilepsy market. All of the existing technologies currently require invasive drilling and cutting through the skull, which dissuades many physicians and patients from their use. Right now, the main technologies, AdTech and InnoMed, are only serving 0.1% of all the patients in need. Our market, the other 99.9%. Now, the target market is focal epilepsy. Focal epilepsy means it's coming from a single region. It's identified in part of the clinical workflow via MRI and other non-invasive imaging. So once you know that you have focal epilepsy, you become a surgical candidate. And our device then will help identify exactly where the seizure is coming from, the data needed to plan surgery, from the frontal and parietal lobe just to begin. That's 40% of the surgical candidates, or about 250,000 of the patients today. Now, within 5 years of commercialization, we're looking to have at least 14,000 cases per year through 40 of the 256 epilepsy centers or hospitals in the country, UCLA being our beachhead. Now, that equates to $500 million in revenue. To get this job done, we've brought together a fantastic set of resources and advisors. Just to name several, George Wallace is our strategic advisor and the former founder and CEO of Microtherapeutics, part of the largest neurovascular exit in history. Dr. Gary Duckweiler, he's a pioneer of catheter-based technologies in the brain. He ran the first safety studies for the now standard thrombectomy devices and aneurysm coils. And Dr. Asif Bari, he's a visionary epilepsy neurosurgeon. He's ready to use this device today. I told him we have to wait, we need to do our verification testing. And he's our safety KOL. And notably, we also have the former director of Medtronic Regulatory, currently putting together our package for breakthrough designation. She shakes hands and knows strong relationships with the FDA in neurovascular, and also some of the best engineers in the business from my network and decade in industry. And also a quick shout out to the Anderson Venture Accelerator, who we're currently fellows at. Now, we've completed much of the technical and business feasibility since 2019. We've raised about $250,000 to date, and now we're looking for partners to fill this $750,000 round to complete this year the rest of our safety testing and achieve FDA breakthrough designation. We're looking to have our first in human study in 2026 and be commercial by 2028. Now, again, I already went over our comparable here, but just a reminder, based on where we want to be in 2026, Synchron just valued at $385 million, where they only can interface with 5% of the brain, where we can interface with 90% of that surface. Now, that's the quick story of Vonova. We're giving new hope to patients with drug-resistant epilepsy. Thank you. If interested in this pre-seed round or the upcoming seed round, the priced round, come find me in the partnering room.